Looking for a great dining experience in Charlottesville? Look no further than the Aberdeen Barn. The barn has been family owned and operated since 1965, with Terry and Angela providing great atmosphere and mouth-watering food at Virginia's big time steakhouse. Enjoy the fine dining or relax in the Sportsman's Bar, a fantastic place to wind down and socialize, surrounded by flat screen televisions tuned to the latest sporting events. You never know who you might bump into at the Aberdeen Barn, where all the greatest Cavaliers have dined over the decades and keep coming back for the delicious menu and good times. Check it out online at aberdeenbarn.com or call 434-296-4630.
Hey, this is Thomas Q. Jones, former UVA All-American running back, and you're listening to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show. Wahoo wah.
Welcome to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show. I'm Chris Graham. I'm pleased to talk with Jerry Ratcliffe today and bring him in. And I'm pleased to talk with Jerry, but we're not going to be pleased to talk about what we have to talk about. Last night's awful loss for Virginia, number 6 Virginia, falling 63-48 to Boston College. And Boston College really dominating that game. And Jerry, I have to ask, I mean, this Virginia team has been really playing with fire the last few games, last 3 or 4 games. I guess it finally caught up with them last night.
Didn't see any fire last night, Chris. That's for sure. I watched a lot of ACC basketball the past few nights, and I didn't see a whole lot of fire. I saw fire in Boston College in their lineup, and I saw a lot of fire in the NC State Wake Forest game last night. Those were teams that acted like that they were playing for something. And Virginia, who should have been playing for something, I mean, they were number 1 in the league coming into the game and playing to preserve that and to secure that, just didn't play with fire at all. And that was the disappointing part to me. I mean, I know that you're going to have off nights where things aren't going well, and like Tony said after the game, they put us on our heels on both ends of the floor, and they did. And Boston College played like they had something to gain, I'm not sure that they really do, but Virginia just played lackadaisical to me. I didn't see any fire at all.
I think that win got Boston College to 8 wins, and with Carolina teetering at this stage, Carolina ended up winning last night at Notre Dame. That was North Carolina's 9th win. Boston College is trying to play their way out of Tuesday in the ACC tournament, which would have been interesting if they could have caught Carolina last night. And the idea of North Carolina playing on Tuesday in Greensboro in a couple of weeks would have been fascinating as well. But BC still knocking on the door there. And it's a good BC team. We've seen they've been up and down, certainly. Early in the season, they lost, I believe, to Maine and New Hampshire at home, but they've been getting better and better as the season's gone on. They beat Virginia Tech twice, including once right after Virginia had lost at Virginia Tech. Boston College went to Blacksburg and beat the Hokies down there. So, but that said, Virginia, except for Jaden Gardner seemed to have some fire. He scored 16 points, 6 of 12 shooting. He was literally the only player on the Virginia roster that shot at least 50% from the field. Everyone else was under 50%. Virginia 4 of 21 from 3, even 8 of 22 on shots at the rim, layups and dunks. That had been what Virginia had been really inoculating itself from bad shooting nights with, is whenever they, if things weren't falling from the outside, they were getting to the lane and getting to the paint and making layups and dunks and really forcing their way that way. But last night, Tony even addressed that. It seemed like they were just kind of his guys were just kind of throwing some shots towards the rim and hoping they'd go in instead of finishing. And so, just a pretty lackadaisical effort all overall for Virginia team last night. Unexpected and very surprising from a Tony Bennett coach team.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know how many shots. It looked like they got down close, and like you said, repeating what Tony said, it did. It looked like they just kind of threw the ball up, hoping that it would go in. It wasn't a real concerted effort to make a good shot, and that's somewhat atypical of this team. They're usually pretty good about shot selection, but last night I can't say that was the case. And I guess we've seen it coming. They didn't play that well against Notre Dame and won, and Louisville and won. And granted, both those teams have some good players and potential, and Boston College has some good players. And, Tony, you said this a couple of weeks ago that if you don't come right every night in the ACC, you're going to lose. Or you're going to be at least susceptible to losing, and it finally caught up with them last night. We knew they couldn't keep playing the way they had the previous week and continued to win, and it jumped up and bit them, just like I guess they were kind of lucky that it didn't happen before. The question mark now is, can they prevent it from happening again? Because 2 of the next 3 games, they're playing against teams that can beat them for sure. At Carolina on Saturday, and then Clemson here next Tuesday, I believe, before closing down the regular season against Louisville. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Carolina is they're 11-2 at home, and they got their act together last night against Notre Dame. Although I didn't see a lot of fire in that Carolina team either.
Oh.
But Virginia, they're tied for second right now, although the tiebreaker goes against them. Tied with Pitt behind a half game behind Miami, but the issue is they could play their way out of the double bye if they aren't careful.
Oh yeah, if losing out, and certainly at this stage, the way they've been playing lately, you'd have to wonder about that. I would also be surprised at that. But yeah, the whatever doldrums this team is in is it's been a couple of weeks now. It wasn't just last night. That's what I was talking about, playing with fire. Any little kid that out there, or you stick your hand on a stove or anything else, you want to see how close you can get before it hurts. I mean, Virginia didn't know how much it was hurting until last night. And a BC team that is healthy and got some guys back that they hadn't had, and was at home with a chance to again catch up and try to get into Wednesday at the ACC tournament. But what gets me, I guess, Jerry, is that Tony went to the small ball lineup back against the first game against Carolina, and helped it, and Vander Plas coming into the game in the second half of that game and playing with 4 guards around him is what keyed Virginia to that win that night. And he's gone with the small lineup, the so-called small lineup, since. I'm wondering if the small lineup may have played itself out, because it seems like teams have figured out what to do with Virginia with this lineup, and Vander Plas hasn't shown consistent ability to make teams pay on the perimeter. He's not hitting those shots from the 3 that we know he can make, but he's 8 for 30 in his last 8 games. It's just you wonder if maybe a lineup change could shake things up, or something else could shake things up for this team.
I think that's something they got to consider heading into the weekend, Chris. As you aptly pointed out, in the first game against Carolina, Baycott wasn't available. Well, he was. He rolled his ankle in the first 2 minutes of the game and didn't play the rest of the way. And the Washington kid, the big freshman, came in, and they had trouble with him until they went to small ball in the second half and negated him. But yeah, I don't know that's the small ball is going to work the second time. Carolina's going to be prepared for that. And I saw something interesting yesterday, I guess it was. College basketball analytics has a thing with the most effective lineups in Power 6 basketball. And at the top of the heap and this is going to sound funny to some Virginia fans, is a Virginia lineup that includes Gardner, Franklin, Bigman, Kihei, and Shedrick, not Vanderplas, which so that makes you wonder a little bit. And I know people have been back and forth with Shedrick all season, and is it the Jay Huff syndrome where he's not strong enough, he doesn't move his feet well enough, he's foul prone, et cetera, et cetera. But the analytics prove out that when he's on the floor, Virginia's a more effective basketball team on both ends of the floor. I know, Tony Bennett and his guys see them in practice every day, but you have to wonder if maybe they're going to have to shake things up a little bit, at least for the weekend, and see what happens in Chapel Hill.
I did some math on it last night. Over his last 9 games, it's actually 9 games where Vanderplas is 8 for 30 from 3. He's averaging 6.5 points and 5.2 rebounds. And that's a decent sample size, 9 games, 6.5 points and 5.2 rebounds. Back when Shedrick was the starter 14 of the first 15 games, there was one game that Vanderplas started for him in that stretch. But in the 14 of the first 15 games, Shedrick was averaging 7.9 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.9 blocks, but also shooting 69% from the floor. Vanderplas shooting in the 30s right now in the last 9 games. So just from that standpoint, numbers-wise, and then defensively, Shedrick gave a lot to this team too. He is foul prone. That is a big issue. It seems like he starts every game with 2 fouls. It seems like whenever there's a whistle blown when he's on the floor, that he's a culprit. Unfortunately for him, that there's a magnet to him in that respect. But I know that what Tony was getting for a while from Vanderplas with the offense was spreading the floor more. The idea that Vanderplas can hit that 3 and make teams respect that. And Shedrick needs to be in, more in the paint area, and maybe that clogs things up a bit. But boy, I mean, the inconsistency, I guess, of Vanderplas was really frustrating. He can be really, really good, but he can also just be very, very quiet. And when he's quiet, this team really has to struggle to overcome that.
Yeah, and I think you and I discussed that at length earlier in the season when, are we going to get the good Vanderplas or the bad Vanderplas? And when he's good, I mean, man, Virginia's hard to beat. But when his shot is off, they're susceptible, no question about it. Particularly if Franklin's not making shots, and he didn't do anything last night either, which is rare, but it happens. And so it's a good question moving forward. What do you do? And is Ryan done? Is it time to turn him loose? Give him more playing time and see what he can do. I think he's ready myself. And everybody else seems to be playing fairly consistently, but it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of lineup they start in Chapel Hill Saturday, and how long they stick with it, depending on if it's effective or not.
I've been thinking for a couple of weeks, I guess I've been writing for a couple of weeks as well, that every time I look at stat broadcasts and see the starting lineups announced 10 or 15 minutes before the game, that I will see Shedrick in that lineup. But, you mentioned Dunn. Dunn would be an interesting a guy to put in that position. He's 6'8", so he's got size. Now he's not as thick as Vanderplas. He's probably similarly sized, just a couple inches shorter than Caden Shedrick, but his athleticism and his ability to shoot the 3 might help as well. Really you saw last night too, the problems with the guys not knocking shots on the perimeter. Boston College played a defense that I give credit to. I gave him in my post-game column last night. I gave credit to Mike Young at Virginia Tech a few games ago. Really played sort of a pack line defense in that game in Blacksburg, packing the lane, basically daring Virginia to make shots and beat him. And since that game, Virginia is shooting 30.5% from 3 and you've seen the offense just get more and more ineffective. The last 2 games, Virginia put up season low points: 57 against Notre Dame in the win, 48 last night. And you saw Kie Clark and Reese Beekman really struggle to get in the paint, and then when they got there, to finish in the paint. Those guys need space to operate, but they're not going to get it if those guys aren't making shots on the outside.
Yeah, and you can't depend on McNeely to make them all. He's shooting a high percentage, but he needs a little help. He can't do it by himself. And yeah, I that's a good point about Mike Young doing that, and that's not the first time he's done that either. And good strategy, and you got to give tip of the cap to Boston College for a good game plan and executing well. Virginia, the closest they got was 44-37 with about midway, a little bit more than midway through the second half. Gardner had made back-to-back baskets, and then McNeely was open on the wing and could have cut it to 4 and missed, and then Boston College closed it out from there. But I think Vanderplas hit a 3 late, but that was the only 3 Virginia hit in the last 13 minutes of the game. So if you're trailing and you're depending on the 3 to get you back in it, that wasn't the way to make it a contest, that's for sure.
Hi, it's Jonathan Cotton with the Good Feet store. As a lifelong runner, the pain in my feet was debilitating. Finally, I went into the Good Feet store and found the answer: personally fit arch supports. They helped me so much I ran my first marathon that year. Then, because I believed in the Good Feet system so much, I bought the store. I'm so happy to offer my hometown community the opportunity to find relief from foot, knee, and back pain. The Good Feet store is located in the shops at Stonefield near Trader Joe's. Book your appointment today at goodfeet.com.
This is Chris Slade, former University of Virginia defensive end, graduate of 1993, back on the staff at UVA. Excited to be back coaching my old stomping grounds. You're listening to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show.
You've been covering Virginia basketball for over 40 years, and you've seen some really good teams, and some of those good teams go through lulls, and this team is certainly going through a lull. They're 21-5, so it's a team with a good record. They've done a lot to get to this point in this season. I wonder if you can think of any years where a team that, had a lot of talent, had a lot of wins, but then went through a stretch. I mean, this is a weird time of year. I've been kind of saying that too, and writing that Virginia kind of knows who they are. We're 2 weeks from the ACC tournament. So it's kind of hard to just get to that finish line, because then the games start really mattering again in a sense. I mean, these games matter too, but they really matter in the postseason. Have you seen teams struggle like this, and what do they do to get through it?
Wow, that's a good question. And coming up, it seems like several of their teams in recent years have struggled a little bit toward the end, and at least played some games closer than they should have been. But the solution is usually shooting, and I didn't think that was going to be a problem with this team. They have a lot of good shooters on the team, and when a couple of them go cold like they did, Tony brought it out in post game last night. We got to find a way to play with fire, and we've got to find a way of getting out of shooting slumps. And I mean, how do you get out of a shooting slump? I really don't know. It's not like last year when they don't have enough guys that can fill it up, and they don't have a supply of shooters. They've got plenty of guys capable of making shots. How you get out of a slump? That's above my pay grade. I don't know.
I think it's above everybody's pay grade, unfortunately. But that was what was so frustrating for so many folks, I guess, watching the game. It seemed like, when the misses weren't even, they weren't even close. There were a lot of misses. They hit front rim, and kind of bound or off to the side and bounded off, and from good shooters. Armand Franklin, McNeely had those 2 threes in a row, and then he missed that one that could have cut it to 4 you mentioned, and didn't hit anything else. Vanderplas hit that meaningless one at the end. It just seemed like, I'll say this. I said this during the broadcast of the game to the people who were watching the game with me in my home office. It felt like Virginia was playing uphill against 6 defenders the whole game on the offensive side. And because there was always a BC guy there to turn keep a guy from turning the corner, had a hand in a passing lane, a hand in some guy's face. Virginia didn't get open shots, and Tony noted that too in the postgame. He said it's unusual. It's one thing to miss open shots. They just weren't even getting good shots. And this team is known for getting, lots of good looks at the rim. So I don't know how you fix that either, except for maybe that's just slightly an effort thing.
Yeah, I think that might be part of it. And then you got to give Boston College credit too. I mean, they played good on-ball defense. They played good help defense. They played good defense at the rim for the most part. And Virginia helped them a little bit by, I think, forcing some shots, hurrying some shots, not taking some good shots. But yeah, at some point, somebody's got to step up and make something happen. And I think Gardner tried last night, but he sure didn't have much help. At one point, I think he had made, I don't know how many field goals he ended up with, but I think maybe 8. And the rest of the team was if you took their shooting percentage, it was atrocious. So
I think he was 6 of 12. The rest of the team was 13 of 47, and that's with a couple of those makes at the end. One from Vanderplas, the little jump shot at the very end by Clark, made it, because at one point they were 8 of 38, and he was like 6 of 10 or something like that. And so that you don't see those kind of numbers from a Virginia team.
Yeah, that's the number I was referring to. And what do you do when everybody's off? And I mean, they even missed a couple of layups, for goodness sake. I don't know. I don't know how you explain that or how you overcome that. But at some point, somebody's got to step up and make something happen. And we've talked about this before, the go-to guy when things get burdensome like that they know that they can count on. They've kind of shared that from player to player throughout the year, as a lot of Virginia teams have, but they don't have like a Joe Harris or somebody that, can just flat out shoot you out of trouble, and not on a consistent basis anyway.
Right. I ran numbers on Reese Beekman. His last, I think it's his last 4 games. He's 8 of 37 from the field. Just, for a guy who had been having a really good season, his last few games, he's really struggled. And he's struggling at the rim, having 5 for 18 at the rim in those games, dating back to the Duke game. At that game, K.A. Clark was lights out, and Armand Franklin lights out at getting to the basket and getting baskets. Beekman in that game was 2 of 9. So, I even think back last night, the first offensive play of the game for Virginia, Beekman got around his guy, had a little bunny layup, missed it. Now, Jaden Gardner tipped it in for him, but I mean, Beekman is a guy that I don't know. There was a stretch this season where he wasn't healthy. Now he's just, everybody goes through a funk at some point in the season. We've seen Jaden Gardner do it. We've seen Armand Franklin do it a couple of times. K.A. Clark had a little spell. This might be the first spell, not injury related, that Reese Beekman is having a tough time, but he's really going through it right now. Yeah,
he really is. And, if they did have a go-to guy, it would probably be Franklin, I guess, in terms of a pure shooter. And, he had a nice stretch for a while there where he could hardly miss. And during this 3-game funk that they're in, he's been a little up and down too. So I don't know. You just
Hey, Jerry, I think you've frozen up on me a little bit here, buddy. And I'm not sure you might still be talking right now. Yeah, definitely frozen up here. Oh, Jerry. And Jerry stepped off for just a second. Yeah, there's Jerry back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
That's all right. That's all right. So
We don't know if we're going to find a Carolina team that's desperate and is going to be fired up and sense a little blood in the water.
Yeah.
Or they're going to be a team that says just been like they have been, and they'll be as lackadaisical as Virginia has been.
That's you mentioned that when you talked about Carolina earlier. They did get the win at Notre Dame last night, but it was a close game. And Notre Dame, it was a 1-point game with 8 seconds to go. Carolina closed it out with foul shots. But you know, they've been playing with fire, if you want to say, not with fire like they're playing with, but they've been too close to the fire for their own good lately. They're certainly a team that's on the bubble. They need the win. So from a motivation standpoint, you would think, okay, they need it. They didn't get to play the game in Charlottesville with Armando Bacot. You mentioned first minute plus of the game, he was knocked out with that injury. This Carolina team last year with Bacot dominated Virginia twice. The first time in Chapel Hill, won by 22. They were different games. I think the final of the first one was 76-54. Bacot had 29 points, 22 boards. The second one, they shut Virginia down completely on the offensive end. I guess thinking back, last night's 48-point performance against Boston College was the most frustrating game for Virginia fans to watch since that Carolina game in the ACC tournament when Virginia scored 43, including 13 in the first half.
Yeah.
But that Carolina team, fully healthy last year, owned Virginia. I assume they're fully healthy going into this one. Not only did Bacot not play more than a minute in that game in Charlottesville, they also didn't have Nance on the floor for them, and they'll have him back. So, okay, they got their full team. They haven't been playing well either as a full team, but they are fully loaded, and they're at home, and they have a lot of motivation and need to get that win.
And you know, we saw Gardner wincing in pain last night with his looked like his right leg, maybe.
Yeah, look like maybe ankle or middle of the calf there, or something like that.
And Tony didn't give us an update in the post game about whether he was injured or not. He said he hadn't had time to check on him, so we don't know what his status might be heading into Saturday either, which could be a big problem if he's less than 100%.
Definitely. He's been a guy that's been really important for this team with his ability to knock some shots down. Certainly last night was the case. So that game is Saturday. It's a night game, right? 6:00 start, I believe, down in Chapel Hill. So we'll have all day to stew on it when we wake up on Saturday.
Yeah. So right now they're a half game back of Miami, Chris, and I think Virginia's going to have to win out to have a chance to win the regular season.
Yeah.
Miami only has 2 games left against Florida State, which shouldn't be a problem. And Miami's rolling. They've won 7 in a row. They're undefeated at home. And then they host Pitt in the last game of the season. And Pitt's a pretty good road team. They're 7-3. But Pitt probably won't lose. They got to play Syracuse, at Notre Dame, and at Miami to close out the season. So it's going to be interesting. And so Virginia, they can't afford much more slippage because Clemson's right on their heels at 12-5. Although Clemson still got to play at NC State and at Virginia. So you don't want to be slipping too much because you're in jeopardy of that double bye.
I thought the margin for error was the game at Carolina. I mean, so now the margin for error is gone because you've lost the game at Boston College. And yeah, you mentioned, I mean, that somebody has to lose between Pitt and Miami in that final game. But they both have that. They both have the head-to-head advantage, and only playing one game against Virginia this year. They both have wins over Virginia this year. So at this stage, it's looking like Virginia is not going to be the 1 seed unless something happens out of the world. Miami would slip against FSU, or if Pitt slips in one of those 2 other games other than the Miami game. But that said, keep yourself in the double bye position, and also, be getting ready for the NCAA tournament at this stage, because right now, the way the team's playing, it doesn't matter where they're seated in either the ACC or NCAA tournaments. They're just not playing good basketball. So they've got to get things figured out. They've got to figure out the situation at center. Is it Vanderplas? Is it Shedrick? Is it Dunn? Is it whatever the case may be? They've got to get the offense rolling again. They got to get the shots falling again. Honestly, the defense was good last night, but it wasn't great. So they've Tony's got a lot of things to fix between now and now these last 3 regular season games, and whatever you play in Greensboro are about getting ready, getting yourself ready and back on track for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, no question, because you don't want to go limping into the postseason. That's for sure. That's almost certain of an early out if you're not playing good basketball heading into the tournament, because you're usually running into a team that is playing well, and they're not going to give you anything. So you better have yourself straight and ready when that time comes. And they certainly, with 3 regular season games left and then the tournament, they have a chance to get back on track. But it all starts Saturday night down at the Dean Dome.
So go to JerryRatcliffe.com and AugustaFreeBreast.com. We'll both have previews and get you ready for that game. Jerry, I know as we're getting ready to wrap up here, we want to thank the people who helped make this possible for us to get out to our listeners.
Yeah, we'd like to thank the Aberdeen Barn, certainly best steakhouse in Virginia. Wonderful place, wonderful atmosphere, wonderful food. You can't beat it. Go by there and enjoy a great evening out. Also, Ragged Mountain Running Shop, terrific people, Mark and Cynthia Lorenzoni. Also, a new sponsor, Roback, who's been with us for about a month now, and one of the fastest growing activewear companies in America, based right here in Charlottesville. Get behind them. You've probably seen their ads everywhere. It's Roback, RHOBACK. Got a little doggy as their logo. I'll hold it up on my phone here. You can see it. I think it's a South African dog. But they have men's and women's lines. Great, comfortable, attractive clothing. They have the polos, the Q zips, and the hoodies. Lots of stuff for golf or whatever. Also, the Good Feet store located over at Stonefield, right across from the theater, and what a great supporter of Virginia athletics that Jonathan Cotton has been. In fact, I think I saw on Twitter last night, Jonathan Cotton, John Easy Step is his Twitter tag. John, Jon, Easy Step. He's got some tickets he's giving away to the Clemson game. So, just look him up on Twitter and tell him you want those tickets. You might get lucky. But he's given a lot of great support to UVA. He's in terms of NIL to Kihei Clark and Jaden Gardner and some other athletes over there, and sponsors a lot of halftime and pregame promotional things at Virginia games. So thank all of those sponsors. So we really appreciate their support. And I'll be soloing it tomorrow sometime with our good friend Andrew Jones of Blue and White Carolina Illustrated. He's the best guy on the Carolina beat. And you talk about somebody that knows the team inside and out. He's going to be on to give us the latest on the Tar Heels with a podcast sometime Friday. So you'll be able to piggyback on top of this broadcast about Virginia, and you'll find out all about the Tar Heels tomorrow. Andrew's traveling back from South Bend today. He was up there for the Notre Dame game last night, and he's, I guess, sometime probably tomorrow. I think Hubert Davis has a press conference on Fridays to talk about their Saturday opponents. So he may have some latest scoop on the Tar Heels and their interpretations of what it's going to take for them to beat Virginia. So two great podcasts, this one and tomorrow, leading up to the Carolina game. So don't miss them.
Yeah, you'll know way too much about the game going into Saturday if you listen to it all.
More than you'll want to know.
More than you want to know. That's right. Well, for Jerry Ratcliffe, I'm Chris Graham signing off. Everyone have a great day.